Okay, this is going to be a really short vlog, and what I've said to myself is every time I write a little blog article, I need to be able to vlog it or talk about it. And I might do this before I write or after I write, and either or it's going to help the writing, I think. This blog I wrote last week, and it's entitled Eat First with Your Stomach. And it sounds like a really kind of common sense thing, but I just wanted to unpack it and talk about it a little bit and how I think about it at the moment. I might actually jump forward to the conclusion, which is we have, in our brains or in our kind of sensory system, a very well-tuned system for telling ourselves if we should eat, if we're thirsty, and a number of different kind of functions. But I mainly want to talk about the one which concerns eating. And essentially, I can't really explain the science better than this, but when our stomachs are empty, it sends signals to our brain and it says eat something, and vice versa. When our stomachs are packed full of food, we feel satiated and we tend to feel sick if we continue eating. These are really healthy, and some people are not very calibrated, some people are very calibrated, but it's something that we all have. And anyone listening to this who has tried to diet might say all sorts of things like, hey, it's so hard when I go out eating with my friends, or it's so hard when I see an advertisement for a donut, or I'm very instinctual, or I'm very emotional. And I say yes. Those are all barriers and all part of the reason why losing weight is so tricky. However, I'm pretty sure every single person would say something like, I know what it feels like to be really hungry, or I know what it feels like to be really full, meaning that their basic system's working okay. I know there's people who don't and who have eating disorders, but I just want to talk to the kind of main part of the population who might be targeted for dieting, or might be downloading an app like MyFitnessPal. So my kind of conclusion is we should really lean into this function as much as possible. We should really lean into the idea of listening to our body and eating when our body kind of wants to eat, even though that's such a weird thing. That's just, we are our body. We should be not force feeding ourselves. We should not be, and what that looks like in practice is really things like, I just laid out a couple of points. Before you eat, I would be kind of listening to my body, and we tend to kind of eat in rough intervals, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. That's fine. You might be different, but that's probably a good starting point. And when you load up your plate for lunch, take 1 second and look at the food that you've piled on, because that's something that, unless you're measuring every single thing, which I'll talk about in a second, that's kind of up to you. Every single time you load up the plate, you need to be kind of calibrated, and you need to look at the food and say, how I might feel really hungry right now, but how am I going to feel when all this food is in my stomach? So just, and again, you're probably not that far off, but just taking a second to look at the food first will really be helpful. A quick tip while you're eating, a lot of kind of advice from Ayurveda, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, medicine says to eat slowly, chew slowly. Eating's a sensory experience. We love eating. That's one of the reasons why we love it. But eat slowly, taste what you're eating, and that's going to really help yourself. Again, if you speed through and you eat really quickly, your brain's not going to be able to catch up in time, and you might eat more than you would typically eat. So that's one tip. And then finally, once you finish, as you're eating, you need to be able to call it quits and say, I've had enough. Again, very tricky to do. Some people can't say no. But those are kind of the 3 steps for while you're actually eating to kind of align a bit more with your stomach. Now, going back to the problem, I mentioned that there's so many kind of barriers to just eating to satiety, to satiety. And two ones that impact me, but there's obviously many more, like general emotions, how you're feeling, social things. But one is actually kind of funny because it kind of looks on the outside like a really healthy thing, which is counting your calories. I've always been a big proponent. I've benefited from calories in, calories out. It definitely works. However, what can happen is if you're eating to a calorie target, so if you download MyFitnessPal, it's going to tell you, based on your age, sex, goals, you should be eating X amount of calories, and that's going to fluctuate a little bit if you exercise more, but it's going to set basically a calorie restriction. And what that means is that's great, you're going to lose weight, but it's also going to override, and it's going to build a habit of overriding how you're actually feeling. So for example, rather than resting or taking time off exercise, I just thought, hey, I burned 2,000 calories today, I got to eat back 2,000 calories. And I don't believe that's really how our bodies work. I think they're a little bit smarter and a bit more efficient than that. It's not as simple as just packing in what you took out. So I think that can really lead to a miscalibration, and even though you might be losing weight, you might be getting a little bit more out of touch with how you're actually feeling and whether you're hungry or not hungry. There's many other things that can lead to eating disorders. They can lead to kind of weird stuff like guys stuffing lunch meat in their face to get protein numbers when they really just don't want to eat at all. The classic extreme example is bodybuilders just so sad microwaving the endless plates of chicken. That's kind of like ridiculous. Obviously we're not bodybuilders and that's not natural, but at a more micro, it's a spectrum, and you're not that far off, to be honest. If you're really kind of meal prepping and doing all this stuff. Secondly, the fridge, that's a big place where we eat, where we open up and look and see what's available to eat immediately. And for me, a big thing is obviously if I've got junk food in the fridge, we tend to eat it, and I don't like wasting food. So what I tend to do is I try and eat up the scraps and leftovers, thinking that it's kind of like good for the environment. I feel bad if I don't eat it, I feel guilty. But again, this is just like MyFitnessPal overriding, calorie targets overriding how we feel. The eating for the fridge, what I'm calling, you're not eating for your stomach, you're eating for maybe an emotion, or maybe you're just eating because of the availability in the foods that you see. So you're getting knocked around by these things, and I just really think at the base level, we should be eating more healthily, and to being more healthy, listening to your body first. It's tricky, but those are, I've offered kind of a bit of a solution and then some of the problems to look out for.